Okay, we are live and on air for our second ever hashtag BadgeChat K-12 Google Hangout Show and Tell edition. And super excited to be joined today by Jared Ward in Utah and Leslie Farouk. And Leslie, we're going to start with you. Where are you and what's your story with badges?
Well, my name is Leslie Farouk, and I am a high school biology teacher at American School Foundation of Monterrey, which is in northern Mexico. It's an international school, but it's largely Mexican nationals who attend. And I started Twitter account for education in January. I started seeing what was there, seeing what I could do, trying to think of new ideas for the classroom, and I came across the hashtag BadgeK12. And we were switching to the next generation science standards at the time, so I spent quite a bit of my summer developing these. Yes, my kids are crazy, by the way. So I spent quite a bit of time developing. I'm going to probably move while the screen shares on because I don't think that 4-year-old ever stops talking, to be honest. But
That's totally fine. And while you're moving, Leslie, anybody who's joining us live, feel free to use the Q&A app to pose questions for Leslie and Jared. And you can also tweet them at hashtag BadgeChatK12. We will be checking for questions there for Leslie Farouk in Monterey.
Okay. So basically what I did with this set of badges is I looked at my different units that I plan to implement. You can see them there across the top. So I went very broad and talked about things like organisms, molecules. You can see them there. And then I was looking at the next generation science standards performance expectations, and it looked kind of like they were loosely based on Bloom's taxonomy. So level 1 was describe, level 2 was a little bit beyond that, how does something work, level 3 was making connections, and so on. And so I had used Credly, which is an online badging tool, and it's embedded within Haiku Learning, our learning management system. And so I started to think really critically about what kinds of badges I could make, what kinds of icons in the center would represent what I was getting at, trying to stick with a color theme as well as a theme of the complexity of what was going on. And I just went nuts one day while I was on summer holidays, and I ended up with all of these badges. And so I'm going to stop sharing this one, and I have one more share I'm going to share because maybe it would be helpful to see. So this is Cell Apprentice. So I modeled it after the World of Warcraft leveling of, I guess, a craft, like I was a herbalist for a while. So if a student can demonstrate that they understand the level 1, the describe in the cells unit, whatever goes with that, they get this badge, and you can see that I've got a bandage there for my icon for that. But I went through and I have all of these described, so I can click on any single one of them within the Haiku Learning Management System and know exactly what it is that it's supposed to be for. Where my whole method fell down is, unlike Schoology, where you can literally have a badge book, like a grade book, and just click on a student and say, yes, this badge for them, multiple students at a time. This Haiku Learning one, they're still new, and I really like the LMS, but you have to individually click on every student, every badge. So at 20 badges times 46 students clicking through 3 or 4 clicks to get it done, it kind of died on the table after that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is totally understand. We're all hitting lots of bumps in the road. I'm sure that anybody watching this could agree. And if you are watching this, you can submit questions for Leslie and Jared using the Q&A app. You can also tweet them at us using hashtag BadgeChatK12. We'll get those asked. Leslie, I just wanted to jump back to you, and you mentioned that when you sort of started on this journey, it was through the next generation science standards. And so could you maybe share a little bit just about what that process was like for you in just the design side of things and mapping out how you were going to align your badges with the next gen standards?
Well, we switched to the next generation science standards through a professional learning community group in our school that was proposed by the science department collectively, but was spearheaded by the middle school coordinator. She's my right-hand girl because I'm the department head, Rachel Davis, and she's actually on Twitter, but her handle's a little bit, I'm not sure, has a 7 in it. But anyway, I'll tag her later. So she ran it, and she was trying to get 6 through 9 switched from the McREL standards, which are very, memorized content heavy because they're older, through to these next generation science standards, which are 3D, three-dimensional, and that is to say there's, things to know, but there's also practices to do, and then there's these things called cross-cutting concepts, which are big picture ideas that run through multiple subjects, not just biology or, physics. So we had the standards written so we could point parents, for example, into the direction of this is what your kid will know and be able to understand when you're done with this class. But we are still working on implementation. We switched in Biology 12 in January. We started with it. So this is the first semester 1 I'm running with them, and when I started looking at them in the summer in earnest to try to get the whole year planned out that way, like at least knowing where I'm going, because you need to know where you're going in order to plan to get there, I was like, okay, this is cool stuff, this is a lot more hands-on, but how can I not only, have because I'm so tired of numbers being the reason kids do anything, maybe let's make it more funsies. And so I was like, oh, wow, these levels of these performance expectations, which they hadn't released when we first started our PLC, but which came out in January after we were well underway in developing. And I looked back in June when I finally had a chance to breathe, and there they were. And I said, this is amazing. This tells me what a student should know, be able to do, understand, explain, plan, etc., according to the science practices that are all laid out. There's 7 of them. And so I thought, how could I use a different approach, knowing that we were taking on haiku learning. We switched from EDU 2.0. That was our old LMS. How can I make it a little bit more fun than just a number in PowerSchool? So that's kind of what I was thinking at the time. And then I have a very scientific brain, so of course I made a table and went across the rows and down the columns, filling cells, and yeah, there it was.
I love that so much. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that graphic of the system again with us, and really curious.
The grid, right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and really curious about when you presented that to students, and maybe even if you've said you've started sharing them with parents as well. What how did you communicate this to students? How did it make sense to them?
Well, I actually ended up sharing this with students in one of I've been trying, instead of giving PowerPoints that are me talking about stuff, I try to give them like a pitch. Like, here's what we're going to learn this week, here's why it matters, and it'll be probably a photo I've taken so I don't have to cite sources. And so I gave them a little 5-slide, here's why it matters to know about your body systems kind of thing, which goes with the organisms column, whichever one that is. I can't see them when I'm sharing them. And then I said, I just gave them the column of those badges that went with that unit, and I said, and in addition to, learning stuff, because learning's good and knowing how your body works is awesome, and of course the PowerSchool number that I don't even want to hear you ask about because that's not why we're here. There's these badges if you're curious, and you can earn these badges. It's kind of, and I told them how I designed it and what the rationale was. Turning learning into kind of a more fun-based kind of game idea, and another incentive besides the number. And right away, I had one student a girl came to me after class and said, Miss, so when do I get these? How do I get these? Where do I get these? I want these. And so then I was like, oh man, when I realized that how much clickiness there was involved in actually bestowing them upon, I started to think, well, maybe I could just give her the excited one then, because I'm 100% certain that some of them couldn't care less, but there were some who were very interested in having. And I even considered printing them, and I still haven't even ruled this out. This is a 1-page sheet in a Word document, going to an office supply house and having it printed on sticky peel paper and like giving them a sticker. that was kind of like my next step. It's just life gets in the way, but there's no reason I can't because it's a year-long course. And I know who's achieved these. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have other ways to tell that are less clicky to know who deserves the level 3 of self, for example. So I think that there is potential to give them a physical thing. It's just what do they stick it to?
Yeah, I love that so much. That there's so much evidence of people really appreciating physical. And I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback on myself here. And so, oh, thanks, Sarah. So I really love the physical aspect there of the badges. That we're just getting so much anecdotal feedback from folks that students having the physical and even adults having a physical badge can make a real difference on the motivation side. You know, you mentioned before that you kind of modeled your leveling after World of Warcraft. Do you mind with that graphic sharing with anybody who's not familiar with World of Warcraft, where you just what you mean by that and what you mean by the leveling? So are you able to unmute Leslie?
There.
Oh, there we go.
Sorry. I didn't mute myself. I don't know how this works. So yeah, I was just had my first child. I told my husband I would no longer be doing raids with him in World of Warcraft, and he promptly took my account over and leveled up my Frost Mage to 80 and started to play like with my account. So I don't play anymore. That was 6 years ago, and he's still playing now. But basically, when you have a character in World of Warcraft, you go kill stuff. But other things that are interesting are that you can have something like herbalism. So if somebody needs an endurance potion to get their endurance back after a fight, instead of waiting for the endurance bar to regenerate naturally, you can hand them over a potion and it instantly fills up. And so I was leveling up in herbalism to be able to make these potions that helped players do things more quickly. And so I noticed that it had a naming system. And Dark Age of Camelot, before that, I was a herbalist in Dark Age of Camelot, too. When I met my husband, I was introduced to this world of player online role-playing games, and I fell in love with Dark Age of Camelot, and then it kind of died out, and World of Warcraft was all the rage. But once you have children, or at least I kind of felt like once I had children, I shouldn't be doing that anymore, because we would be raiding with people who would be husband and wife saying, the kid's crying, whose turn is it? I don't know, or is it yours, is it mine? And nobody would go get the kid. And I was just like, I'm not going to be that. It's like, I don't think that's fair. So I stopped. But that's kind of what it's all about, is getting a skill leveled in the game that helps other players do things. So
I love that so much. And you shared the story about the student who was immediately just so motivated of, Miss, how do I start earning these right now?
He's a gamer.
Do you have any good examples of the opposite end of that spectrum, where a student has said, Miss, why should I care about this? And just how that conversation went and how you maybe
well,
I didn't.
That's not a conversation. That's a look in their eye. A look that says, what are you doing? As if you think that that is going to make me care more than anything else, more than the number in Power School. You know, we've been holding and dangling grades over kids' heads for so long. Wherever I've talked to people, that they don't even remember what the point is in the first place, other than a number in a computer program that they refresh constantly. And so when you offer another form of sort of reward, to me, one of the things I struggled with the most in this whole badging thing is it's still extrinsic motivation. It's an external carrot to be dangled. And that's something that even though I like shiny gold stars too, I'm just like, how can I make my classroom be a place where they're learning because they like learning, and learning's the point, and learning's the goal. And like, if they get a badge doing it, well, that's a side effect. If they get a good grade doing it, that's a side effect. And so personally, I would be one of those kids, I'm sure, in a class who would roll my eyes and say, like, I already have a number that says I'm awesome. Why do I need a sticker too?
Mm-hmm.
That's a look in somebody's eye. And it's sometimes, I think some of the students this year, I'm having a really great year with the kids, even though the badge thing didn't work right away. It's just that there are some kids who, no matter what I do, even an interpretive dance, you know what I mean? It's not, biology is not their thing. They're just doing it because they have to. It's a core course, and as soon as they're done and they have their 70%, that's it. They're not interested, and so they're not. It's hard to think that a little sticker is going to change that.
Totally, yeah, that's a constant battle that we all fight on the student engagement side. When you mention your struggles, Leslie, and just where you so quickly in just a few short months gone from finding out badges to already developing a whole system of badges. I'm wondering if you could just share. So many folks every week on Badge Chat K-12 are saying, well, how do I get started? And so in your own journey of getting started, any cautionary tales, anything where just by learning from you, folks can start out where you are, not where you were?
Yeah, I guess the making of the badges was pretty simple. Decide what you want to make them around, and I made them around my unit names and so the overall topic. So you can have a topic, and you could use Bloom's taxonomy to help you decide that kind of leveling within those. I mean, I think that works pretty well, and I don't really feel that educational materials that I've prepared are proprietary in any way. I'm sure, my school thinks differently, but I created those on my spare time in the summer, and I think that if anybody wants to use that model with their own unit names and their own idea of what a level 1 and a level 2 would be, or maybe it's not levels at all. Maybe you don't need to get a level 1 to get a level 2. Certainly if a student can't describe something, but they can show how it works, that would mean for my level 2 badge before they get a level 1, and that's totally legit. I just didn't want to have to think up symbols for all of them instead of numbers. You know what I mean? Like, it gets a little bit when it's like when Prince changed his name to a symbol. I don't want to have to come up with other names for things that are like level 1, level 2, but I don't think they necessarily have to go in sequence for the student to earn them. I guess it's just my cautionary tale would be, before you even bother to put the time in, not that I regret it, I like doing things just because I like doing things, but if you're somebody who kind of resents doing things that feel good and then you don't have a way to actually act on them, you may want to consider checking with what your LMS's capabilities are beforehand, or you may want to consider going directly to Credly with your kids, because I know you can. Or any other, I don't know of any others because I liked it so much. Schoology had their own built-in ability to do that, and I never did check on EDU 2.0 Neo, but there's Canvas, there's Blackboard, there's so many LMSs, and if you don't even have those, you could consider sharing them by copy-paste into Google Docs. Individual Google Docs shared either through Google Classroom or Doctopus is the one that I use, and just paste them on the kids' page. I mean, I could do that too right now, and now I'm thinking about I might do that, but it was very frustrating to have it all made and be so excited about it, and have some kids seem to care about it, and parents being intrigued by it, at the open house, and then not actually being able to take action with the creation,
Gotcha. Yeah, and for anybody who's watching live or who watches this recording later, on the badgechatk12.com resource page, we do have a article there that gives you a whole slew of badge issuing platforms that you can check out along with reviews. So definitely check those out and decide what's best for you. And again, we're live with Leslie Farouk, and Jared Ward's coming up momentarily. If you are watching live, feel free to use the Q&A app to ask us questions or tweet them at us using hashtag BadgeChatK12. And Leslie, just one last question there is on the sort of lessons learned side of things. Is there may be a cautionary tale there around just how big you go at the very beginning? Like, if you had to do it all over again, would you have started with a handful of badges, or would you still have built out the entire system because it just, for backward planning purposes, puts you in a better place?
I would build it all out, because if I have, what I found last year when I played with the badges, we did a pilot to see which LMS would win and I was playing with them in Schoology and in haiku learning, and I got annoyed because the badges that I had in there didn't match. I like things to match. So if you're somebody who likes things to match, it gets very hard later, especially if you've awarded them. In haiku, you can't take them back again. So you're going to have that one that's the ugly without an icon that makes sense, and then all these other ones that match. So I just redid it, and after I learned that from the pilot, and I would prefer to just have everything I need ahead of time, and if I'm going to use it, then it's already there, rather than having a hodgepodge of things that don't seem to go together.
Awesome. Well, Leslie, just can't thank you enough for taking the time this afternoon to jump on this Hangout with us and join us on this digital badge show and tell. I know that there's just so many folks out there who want to get started, and it's way easier if you, instead of having this, abstract conceptual concept and a totally blank canvas, to be able to lean on something that's already been created by others. And so just thank you so much for being willing to share your exemplars with us. And it looks like we might have lost Leslie for one account for another account. And that might be a great segue, speaking of canvases, to hop in with Jared Ward. And we'll see if we get Leslie back with us. If you're watching live, we'll be answering your questions. Just use the Q&A app on the Google Hangout. You can also tweet them with hashtag BadgeChatK12. And we will make sure that our guests answer your questions that way. In the meantime, our next up guest is Jared Ward. Jared, do be sure to unmute yourself. And before you jump in with your badges, please do share just a little bit about yourself and your journey to where we are today.
Sure. First, I got to say thanks to Noah for keeping this going and being so proactive. I get to talk about badges in a few places where I go now, and I share this Badge Chat K-12 community everywhere I go. I do think that as far as badges go, K-12 is kind of guiding the conversation. It's happening in higher ed, but it's harder to get them to talk together. K-12 teachers seem to communicate, collaborate, share ideas a little bit more effectively. So I got to say thanks to Noah and everybody else who helps keep this organized, and then thanks for having me. So my background's in education. I taught ceramics and sculpture for 15 years. So mastery learning and standards grading, those were all things that I was familiar with. And then I was a technology integration specialist here in a large district in Utah for about 6 years. And now I work for Canvas. So full disclosure, I will not make this a sales pitch, but I do work for Instructure. I work on the Canvas K-12 team here, and I've loved it. But I still get to talk about badges. I still get to teach with badges. So I just wanted to share a little bit of my background with badges. So let me jump to a screen share here and show some of the places where I've started. There we go. All right. So the very first time I started with badges, it was with an app development club, and it was an unofficial group. There wasn't really a class. It was optional to attend, but we wanted to make it something that the students would, instead of grades, they'd have other motivations or incentives to attend. And so we started with this badging system in class badges, and it's one that I recommend to beginners. If you're just getting started, it's easy to build badges with requirements. They are internal to class badges. They're not what we'd call open badges, where they can migrate to other places, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But I just go to the badge itself and say I want to award it, and I got logged out of my account. But I just check the box for the students I want to award it to, and I click the award badges button, and it goes to all of those students all at once. It was really easy to manage and maintain. Students could submit their work, show us their work during our app club meetings, and we'd award badges there. So that was where I started, and then I started working with Canvas as our LMS inside of our district. I worked with it for about 3.5, 4 years, and we had a badging system for training teachers, and where they could kind of level up and share their level of experience. We had the badging system that we used was based on the ski classifications kind of into skiing here in Utah. So we had green, blue, and black diamond level badges for these teacher training programs. And we did kind of the same as Leslie, or something similar anyway, where we did let teachers earn the badges, and they were all analog badges at first. They weren't digital badges. Now I believe they've got them set up to where they're awarding them on a regular basis as digital badges. But they were actually just stickers, and the teachers put a placard on their door. Every teacher's got that rectangle window, it seems like, on their door. It doesn't matter what school or when it was built. Everybody's got that rectangle window. And so we just built a placard that would go in the teacher's window, and we put the stickers there as they earned them. And it did a couple things for us. We thought it was just a great way to recognize teachers for the work that they had done. But it also became a way for students to understand the level of technology use that might happen, or whatever it might be, but the level of use that that teacher might have in the classroom. But it also was a professional development tool as well, where teachers would go to their peers and say, hey, you've earned this badge. I want to learn how to get to that same level. Can you help me? So it helped us there. And what I'm showing right now is
Jared, if you don't mind me just interrupting and ask a quick question.
Sure.
Again, anybody who's watching live, you can also ask questions to Jared using the Q&A app on your Hangout, or tweeting them with the hashtag BadgeChatK12 hashtag. We'll make sure to ask him his questions. But how did the introductory conversations go with teachers when you started rolling out leveled badges for professional development?
We just kind of told them that it was going to happen, and they were just stickers, and we kind of made a game of it. Everybody likes getting a sticker. It's a vocabulary that teachers understood, putting a sticker on your paper and saying, hey, good job. But we wanted it to be tied to performance standards, and it did start the conversation about badges inside of the LMS, inside of their own learning. The place where I start with teachers when I talk about badges now is, if a student could earn a badge in your course for any of the work that they do, or maybe it's overall in the course, they could earn a badge that could be displayed on their LinkedIn profile to help them get a job, to connect with other like-minded individuals, to promote themselves. What would that badge be for your class? And so it helped us to kind of get to those conversations. And again, that's kind of the conversation starter I have as I meet with other districts as they're starting a badging system as well. So
just from the get-go, it was perceived by teachers as something that was being done for them, not to them.
Yeah, I mean, again, it was internal. It was for professional development. We didn't make a huge deal out of it being part of like a gamification or a World of Warcraft, because I don't think you have to be a gamer to understand how badges work as far as the gamification aspect. I think everybody kind of gets that, and so it wasn't too hard to sell when we started doing this. It was something that teachers, it added a little bit of fun to professional development. It was kind of fun. So
nice.
Yeah. So now I work again. I'm at Canvas, and I teach a class on how to use badges in your coursework, and I try to focus on badges for learning, not badges for the LMS sake or badges for grading sake. I try to focus on, again, some of the things I've learned from this group, where again, you've got learning outcomes or activities that happen in class or student projects that that they're working on, and you're giving badges maybe for some of the fun things that happen in class. Great job in class today. Appreciate your participation in this discussion. But I really like tying these badges to learning outcomes, to the performance standards like Leslie talked about, or to completion of a project or completion of a course. And Canvas doesn't have a native badging system, so they rely on third-party tools to get badges inside of the system, which was nice for me because I didn't inherit a badging pedagogy. I was able to kind of start from scratch and decide how I wanted it to look. And there are some, Leslie talked about some of the limitations with some systems, and so the one that I'm most excited about right now is Badger. It's built by a company called Concentric Sky, and Nate Otto, that is in charge of Badger. He's also I'm going to mess it up, and then it's going to be live and recorded, and I apologize, Nate. But
the executive director.
Thank you. Of the Open Badges Network, is that I say that
Badge
right?
Alliance.
The Badge Alliance, yeah. And he's built this Badger platform and helped build the integration. And so he's been a fantastic resource. And Credly comes from the same background where they want badges to be able to be awarded in an open way that can move and transport from one system to another. And that's something I think is important as well. So I thought I might show a couple of the badges. I mean, these are the badges that I award as students learn how to build and award badges in their own courses.
Absolutely. And real quick before you do, Joe,
Yeah.
we do have a question coming in from, I believe, a student of yours.
Oh, yeah?
Gideon Williams asks, you
Oh, yeah.
already mentioned your preference is Badger right now, and then he says, what is the coming soon one like? And he wonders if it might be biased to that answer.
I don't. Yeah. So Badger has their integration built now. I haven't had a chance to use it yet, and so I'm still kind of working towards there. So it's built. Credly's building an integration with Canvas as we speak, and I'm not sure their timeline there. We were hoping for something a little sooner, but yeah, Gideon, he took a course from me a while ago. He was a fantastic student, made some great badges. And then he's been active in this community as well. I've seen him on some of the weekly chats, so that's been kind of cool to see as well. And he's over in the UK, so I don't even know what time it is there, but he must be staying up late to join us here. But I don't know. I'm happy to answer questions about if they're platform specific to Canvas. I'm happy to answer questions anytime. You can find me on Twitter and wherever else. So I'm around. But I thought I'd just show really quickly what this looks like to me inside of my course. And I do have just full disclosure, these are teachers, not students, so there shouldn't be any FERPA issues here. But my apologies for Sam. He's going to be my example here. I should have grabbed Gideon's from last time I taught this class. But what's great about badges inside of Canvas, the way they're set up right now, is that they do show on the student's profile. So another teacher in another course can see those displayed. So it's kind of nice to see student credentials moving forward. I'm going to jump from there to the badge settings. This is, again, something that's important to me. This is just a teacher certification course, so they have to complete 10 steps, and once they're done, it's done. There's only one single module or a learning unit inside of this course, so I only have one option here for modules requiring completion, but I do have options to say outcomes requiring mastery. So I can automatically award the badge if the student meets those 3 learning mastery outcomes and if they complete the module, or I can turn that one off. And I love that badges can be awarded automatically. I can go in and award them manually. I can require evidence that they've completed the badges. And then the thing that I like that Leslie kind of talked about is that she had a frustration with with Credly where you couldn't revoke the badge, and so with Badger, I know you can set a time limit, and so badges can expire if you want students to recertify every year, and so that's something that's interesting. But yeah, revoking badges I think is a platform deficiency just about across the board. So and then I don't know if there's any other questions about Canvas specifically. I do have a slideshow when I start talking about badges. I like to talk about why, and it's some of the things that Leslie talked about providing student choice and increasing motivation and measuring things that aren't graded, and all of that information I'm happy to share. I've got a blog post I'll tweet out here that covers everything about badges and how to get started, some of the Canvas specific things, but a lot of the things from that presentation are not really necessarily connected to a platform. It's just how to get started, start with your outcomes, consider using levels, badge stacking, other components of badges that I think are important. And I love Leslie's example with that grid. I think with Leslie's permission, I might steal that as far as an example. I love that it starts with, it's basically a rubric. Here are my levels, here are my standards, and it maps out exactly how that would work. I think that's a great place to start.
Before I do, Gideon does want to correct you. He is in the Netherlands as opposed to UK, although I also getting an apology. I think I've referenced him as being in New Zealand. I don't know where I got that in my head, but we're both guilty on that front. As far as what when you're because you're having a chance to work with so many teachers, I'm curious if you are seeing any sort of common stumbling blocks as people are getting started with digital badges. Are there any things that you're just noticing are real stumbling blocks to be wary of? Just so you know, you're still sharing your screen there.
Yeah, do you want me to turn that off? I can switch it back to you. I don't have much else to share. I like showing your face over mine, so. Yeah, let me switch it back to you. You've got the ball now. I don't know. Everywhere has different concerns, different stumbling blocks. Some of the schools, I worked mostly in the Midwest, Texas, Wisconsin, Iowa, and in some of those states, they're pretty far along as far as learning mastery grading, standards-based grading, and so adding a badging system makes a lot of sense for them. They're ready to go. They understand their outcomes, and they're ready to award badges based on those outcomes that they've already got established. Some schools that I've worked with are looking primarily at badges for professional development and trying to figure out how to introduce badges to their teachers through professional training, and I think that's a great approach. Teach the teachers with badges, and then their questions about badges and how to implement it in their classroom, I think, will increase. So the biggest stumbling block is really understanding how far badges can reach, especially open badges. That getting people to understand or see that they can live in other networks, in other places. I think that's the biggest challenge I have. I've talked about it.
Yeah, and I'm curious when you talk about the reach of badges, if you're finding that gets people to deeper conversations about just making sure the badges they issue are meaningful.
I think so. I think when you talk about badges, again, I'm a fan of open badges, of things being able to leave, wherever it is, the class, the learning management system, jumping out of class badges to a bigger system that had an open platform was an important step. But it did make me think, if I'm going to award these badges and they could go anywhere, I've got to really be careful about how I award them, or at least be thoughtful. Most of the students aren't going to display every single badge I award on their LinkedIn profile, because I still award, badges for pretty small things. But I also award badges for completion of like mastery of a course. I understand this concept and I could maybe teach it to others. And I'm hoping that those get shared on LinkedIn profiles, that those get shared in public places. And
I think you sort of hinted at that a couple minutes ago, as far as folks being able to use the badges in order to know who to go to for help. Maybe is that where you were going, that with some of these professional development badges, it can kind of communicate expertise internally with the staff and to students as well, as far as who are the folks who are experts in a place you might need help?
For sure, I think so. And the hard part is, where do I find other people's badges who know the things that I want to know, so that I can find people with the expertise, especially in the big open world of the internet. And I think that's maybe why badging and gamification itself was kind of taken off the Horizon report for K-12 education, but badges was left on. And I think the reason it's still on the 5 years out is we don't know where they live, where to share them, and maybe even what the currency is. What does a badge give me that a degree does or doesn't? What's the comparison between a degree, an online certification, a face-to-face course that's a certification, or an online badge that I've awarded? How do those relate to each other? Who's got the most value? And I think as we start to work out that currency, that's when badges will start to be really powerful. We already have the tools, they're open, we can share them anywhere, but having a common place to share them, a common provider maybe, or a set of providers that have a similar vocabulary, I think that's the powerful part. If I want to offer a Microsoft Office credential to my students who have mastered some of the basics of Microsoft, who issues that badge and where does it live and how many institutions could issue it? There's some pretty cool things that could happen there.
Absolutely, and as much as you said, K-12 is really taking the lead in really setting the tone for what digital badges are and can be when we look at credentialing learning. Do you think that maybe that currency piece that you mentioned is a place where K-12 is going to be learning from industry?
Yeah, and I would hope we learn from higher ed as well. There are institutions, especially it seems like the health sciences in higher ed, seem to have this idea figured out. They understand certifications and credentials, and badges fit pretty well into that digital certification platform where I've got to have so many certifications to be able to progress through my program, my nursing program. And so there are examples there, and starting to have that conversation, I think, on a national level with K-12 leaders like you've kind of got going here, I think that's where that'll come from.
Nice. Kind of totally changing topics and going back to when you talked about the importance of teachers earning badges before issuing badges. Wondering if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, just what you think is going on there from maybe an andragogy perspective, and then in your own issuing that first badge to teachers, if there's sort of a badge that you're finding as the first badge that a lot of your teachers earn first and foremost.
Gosh, I'm a fan of teachers learning with hands-on with the tools, regardless of what it is. So, if I'm teaching my students, my teachers, how to use Nearpod, we should use Nearpod to learn that tool, and then ask the teachers to go learn somewhere else and teach it somewhere else. So, I'm a fan of that hands-on, experience-based learning type idea. So, as far as my personal opinion about teaching teachers or andragogy, you said, I think that teachers need hands-on experience. They have ideas, they have experiences that we can connect to, but giving them hands-on with whatever platform or idea we're teaching, I think, is the important part. So whether it's badges or any other tool, I think that's important. And then as far as starting, I don't know. The badge about badges maybe really get a little bit, what do they call that? But kind of meta about earning badges. I understand how to use badges. Badge might be a great place to start.
That's really great advice for everybody. And we do have a question from the PDLN network on Twitter. Wondering if you could share who are some of the schools/districts that are using badges for professional development that you're aware of.
So Canyon School District here in Utah that's where I came from. They're using badges. I really need to do a poll at the end of these sessions that I teach and ask who's actually using it. But I have a couple schools that I've worked with in Texas. I don't want to throw them under the bus because I'm not sure how far along they are. I've worked with a great school that the Inocal people have worked with. They did a white paper on their school a little while back. Kettle Moraine School District up in Wisconsin near I just lost the name, near Milwaukee. They have a school named KM Global, Kettle Moraine Global, and they're using badging for student work, and I think they're looking at badges for professional learning as well.
Awesome. And for anybody who wants to get questions into Jared, you can use the Q&A app on the Google Hangout. You can also tweet them using hashtag BadgeChatK12. We'll make sure to answer those. I know I can chime in with a couple other school districts that are using badges for PD at a district level. I know that Cherry Creek School District here in the Denver area is doing it. One of our Badge Chat K-12 moderators, Kelly Martin, who I believe is in Tahoe, I know she has created a system that hopefully later on December on one of our show and tells, we'll be able to get her on to share their badge system. But it definitely seems to be growing and growing fast, doesn't it, Jared?
Yeah, I think so. I don't. When you started this chat, one of my old team leads mentioned this to me. I think it was about a year ago now, in about December, almost a year ago, right? When this started,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something just starting to be talked about in our district and in some of the places here in Utah. And now, when I've gone out and done conferences or other trainings, it's a pretty highly requested feature. I think it's growing. The conversation is growing pretty quickly. All over the place. And I think it is because we're talking more about standards-based grading and connecting student performance to a lot of other systems, and badges just seem to fit well there.
I totally agree. And we do have a question here from Rich Dixon. I think he's also in California. He asks, have you seen any examples of K-12 badges being recognized by higher ed or in career opportunities for students after they graduate? And I'll let you handle this one first, and then I might add to it as well.
My short answer is no, I have not yet, and I think there's an opportunity there for us. But one of the things we get asked is does a student know how to use the LMS? And if they could certify that from their K-12 institution, and the higher ed maybe doesn't have the same badge, but they do a similar system, they could share that with their teacher and say, look, I'm ready to go, and move on. But yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I think that's a great idea, though.
Rich, I can also chime in that we're still kind of just at the very tippy-toppy of that iceberg. And so we aren't, as far as higher ed goes, I don't think we have anything yet. I can tell you, stay tuned. Organization called ACTFul and I are working on a language proficiency credential, and we're currently in the process of trying to recruit a university partner that will take students' language proficiency and transcript it in some of our less commonly taught languages. So hopefully by June we'll be able to answer in the affirmative on the K-12. And I think one of the things we're seeing early on with career opportunities especially is just with CTE blowing up nationwide, and just a real focus and value on our vocational schools and community colleges, that when we have opportunities at the high school that can crosswalk not necessarily through concurrent enrollment, but through an equivalence, that we're going to get to a place where we might start to see employers, for example, looking at a student who's learning welding in high school and adding to a welding certificate that we can then really use to help them gain employment. So hopefully, Rich, while right now we don't have a lot, we soon will. And it's just a really exciting time and place. Another thing I could tell you, here in Colorado, we've met with some of the higher education folks and are looking at the possibility of how might we take competencies for a community college course and use badges, the evidence attached to badges, to show where a student has met the competencies for that course, and then through a prior learning assessment challenge the course essentially and try and get that student credit. So hopefully we'll have lots of really great answers for you sometime like this time next year, Rich. And Sarah just shared that Tom Welsh out in Kentucky, one of my favorite educators, let us know that at the Governor's School for Entrepreneurs, the last 2 summers, students have earned high school credit for their program through which they are earning badges. So awesome to see that that's already happening in Kentucky. Lots of leaders there. Jared, I had one last question for you on my end, and then we'll see if we have any more coming in on the Q&A or on the Twitter. Folks, if you have questions for Jared, you can use the Q&A app on the Hangout, or you can tweet them at us with hashtag BadgeChatK12. But going back to something that you said you really value, and that was in a system where the badge goes with the student in a way that enables other teachers to see the credits they've earned. I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit more about that, and especially in a K-12 setting where the students might be K-12 students who are earning badges, just why you think that might be really valuable to convey that information to others and amongst other teachers.
I think part of the incentive for students, even in K-12, and we've got to protect student privacy, but I think if you give the students the option, maybe we can't require it, but if we give the students the option to share their badges with other teachers, again with potential employers, scholarship committees. It adds legitimacy, I think, to the badging system. It's beyond stickers, gamification system. It's a lifelong learning skill. Like you mentioned, the badging community may be taking a lead from the online certification program. My dad went back to school when I was in middle school and got I think it was like a Cisco networking engineer certification. And these certifications, digital certifications, have been around for quite a while. I mean, that idea isn't new, but giving students the ability to earn certifications or credentials based on things that they do in class or mastery of certain skills, I think, again, it helps with that school to career path. It lends legitimacy. It gives the student control over their learning. They're able to share their badges in a way that is meaningful to them, so they can share it with teachers or other students inside of the LMS, but they can send it beyond, again, post it on their LinkedIn profile or share it in a badge collection in Credly or on Mozilla's Open Backpack. And so you've got options there for the students, and again, I just think it adds legitimacy to badges as a learning process or a part of the learning.
I really love what you have to say about that, and kind of piggybacking on that, I think that it just adds so much to the narrative of who our learners are as achievers, right? That a teacher, before they've ever even had them in a class, once they matriculate in for the next year, they can see, oh, well, look at all these assets the students bring to me based on the badges they earned from last year's teachers. Mm-hmm. We do have another question here from Gideon, asking if you're familiar with the Open Badge Passport from Finland.
I haven't seen that, and I'm wondering, I think Gideon may have shared that with me before. I haven't had a chance to look at it closely, so no, I haven't seen that yet, but we should get a link to that in the, oh, there it is. He just tweeted it out, so I'm going to check that out. I like it. We should get Gideon on to share what he knows about it.
Yeah, we're trying to move quickly in real time here. For anybody who's curious, we can share that screenshot there that Gideon just gave us from the Open Badge Passport. And maybe this is something we need to, for future Badge Chat K-12 show and tell, reach out to our colleagues in Finland to see if we can get them to share their passport with us. That could be really cool. Well, Jared, thank you very much for your time, and for everybody who's been watching. If you have any quick questions, we'll make sure to hang around for a minute and get to them. And if we go off air, we'll go ahead and respond to them on Twitter or on the Hangout page. But thank you very much, Leslie Farouk, for joining us from Monterrey, Mexico, and sharing her amazing badge system with us, aligned with the next generation science standards. Super exciting. Jared Ward in Utah with CanvasLMS. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your afternoon to share with us, Jared.
Yeah, and thanks again for having me. Nice work.
Absolutely, and for anybody who doesn't know Jared, he's one of our original Badge Chat K-12 chatters. He's been with us since the very beginning. Huge thanks to Dan from Red Critter. We've been seeing him down there at the bottom for helping us keep track of questions today, and as well as our Badge Chat K-12 moderator and co-founder, Sarah Thomas in Washington, D.C. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. I hope that this has been helpful and continues to be helpful. If you have badges you want to share on Show and Tell, please do reach out to us and let us know on the hashtag BadgeChatK12 on Twitter, or you can tweet at me or Sarah, and we'll make sure to get you on the schedule. And next week we'll be returning to Twitter for our traditional 140-character Badge Chat K-12. Until then, thank you, everybody, so much for your time, and we really appreciate learning and growing with all of you.